So I am recording just in case folks aren't able to make it today, they'll be able to watch later. And if at any point you can't hear me or Brianne's here with me also, I have to change her name. Then that let us know and we will definitely do that. NNE?
Yes.
Okay. There we go. Excellent. So let's start by just having y'all like briefly introduce yourselves and just like super top level, like what sort of internship did you do? Rianne's here, so we'll start.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Rianne. I'm a third year psychology major and business minor. And this past summer, I did the summer research program and I did a study relating to education and autism.
Great, thank you. Sahaba, have you next?
Hi everyone, my name is Sahiba. I graduated class of 2024 and I'm actually currently working as a postdoc researcher at the Buck Institute for Research on Aging. And the internship I'll talk about is I've had 3 internships, each during the summer at St. Mary's and then at San Diego National Labs and at Sense Research Foundation, and I'll just primarily focus on Sense Research Foundation for today.
Great, thank you. And Jessa? Nope. Did we lose volume? I tried to change the screen and apparently I lost everything. Okay, Sahaba, can you say something just so we can see if it's...
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay, great, excellent. Okay, Jessa, do you want to go?
Sorry, our Wi-Fi just went out over here.
Oh, okay, no problem.
About 2 minutes ago. So
okay.
I think it was taking a second to come over. I'm Jessa. I'm a senior now, which is kind of crazy to say. And I've had 2 internships. I've never done one at St. Mary's, unfortunately, but I was in the Next Gen Leaders program here, which is not a science major specific program. It encompasses a bunch of different majors, which is really cool. And then last spring semester, oh my God, that was a year ago. Last spring semester, I did like a little mini internship with Garuda Therapeutics. And I don't know which one I'm talking about today, whichever one is more helpful. Yes.
I think like it's nice to hear about the ones that are off campus because sometimes people don't know how to get those. Great. So let's go around again and just tell us a little bit more about the internship. Like sort of where was it located? What general type of work were you doing? Was it sort of in your field, out of your field, exploratory? How did it relate to what you do?
Okay, so I did the summer research program, like I mentioned. It's 10 weeks long, but since I was psychology, I had to begin a little bit sooner to get IRB approval. But I began probably around right after spring break, I think is when I began, maybe around April. And the fact that I got my IRB approval early, so when summer research started in May, I think, it was really easy for me to just start because everything was already prepared during the school year. So for my study, I basically interviewed parents and surveyed who had children with autism and to measure how satisfied or unsatisfied they felt with schools in the Bay Area in supporting their children with autism. I surveyed about 200 parents, I think, in the Bay Area, and I recruited from a bunch of different schools, daycares, summer camps, from all over the Bay Area, San Francisco, Oakland, Danville. And then I interviewed about 20 parents all on Zoom. So during the program, I wasn't in a lab or anything, but a lot of my peers were in Brusso. So I think that experience was a little bit different for me compared to everyone else. But every Wednesdays we did do meetings with all of us in the program ran by Dr. Lee, and in addition to a bunch of guest speakers we had. And I thought that was a really valuable part to the summer research program at St. Mary's because you kind of get to learn skills that you probably wouldn't even learn or think about elsewhere, like networking, how to create a good slideshow, presentations. So yeah, that was really cool. And I got to learn from a lot of my peers who did other sciencey things. And coming from me as a psych major, the fact that St. Mary's allows psychology students to be a part of the science program, I thought is a big plus. And I know a lot of other schools don't do that. So I enjoyed that. We had presentations and it carries over into the fall a little bit. And I know talking to some of my other peers who did the program, one thing that we really liked about it is skills that we learned from doing the same activities, but the difference. So I know for some people who might have not been as strong at public speaking, that was a skill they learned. But for other people who like to talk a lot, we had to learn how to cut it down and be very concise. So I feel like learning both sides, that was a really cool plus, and the variety we saw. It was a great experience, people from different majors, different grades, different projects. It felt very independent. I worked under Professor McCauley, but I worked as the only student with him, so it was very independent, and yeah, it was great.
Great. Thank you. Sahaba.
I guess I'll give a brief overview of the three. And so the first one was at St. Mary's. That was my first summer internship where I was a freshman. Um, and I was working with another student under one of the biology professors at the time. And it was not in my field. This was a time when I was trying to just explore and see what I liked about biology. Excuse me, sorry. And so it was a very outdoors experience, more like getting into the Redwood Grove on St. Mary's, getting down into the grass and getting samples of aphids, of plant samples, and then also a little bit more lab work, like doing ELISAs and things like that. I would say it was about 50-50 independent and working with others. I had my own separate project, but the other student I was working with, we had a lot of overlap in how we were prepping for our project. So we got to kind of learn how to brainstorm together and how to work kind of with others in science. That was a really helpful experience. And it was also 10 weeks, a paid internship at St. Mary's. And then the next summer was at Sandia National Laboratories, and that was very independent. I was working primarily alone on my project, directly with my PI. That was also a 10-week paid internship. And that one was more focused on bacterial work. So I was starting to kind of shift into like biomedical science, which is, I think, where my interests are and have actually continued to develop. And so there I got to learn a lot of like high throughput techniques, which may not have been readily accessible, especially in my colleges and things. So that was kind of cool to get exposure to new techniques that I wouldn't have otherwise. And it was also really great to network outside of St. Mary's, to meet other scientists and learn about what other people are doing in the fields that they're in, which is helpful for me to imagine myself where I might be in like 10 years or so, hopefully. And so after that, sorry, after that experience, I was pretty much confirmed that biomedical science is where I want to see myself. So the third experience was at Sense Research Foundation in Mountain View, another 10-week paid internship, all having a very similar structure, where I had my own project and again working very independently. And this is really the internship that I think helped me land the position where I'm at now. And it was kind of helpful to see, you know, this is exactly where I wanted to be, doing biomedical research that's directly related to developing therapeutics for a lot of different patients and populations. And so that's why I would highlight that internship as well, in just terms of skills I learned, networking again. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I did the two. Neither of them were at all in the vicinity of St. Mary's. Um, for me, I'm an out-of-state student, so staying over the summer just wasn't realistic for me. So I've always been searching for internships in my home state of Hawaii because obviously I can't drive across the ocean. So it would be really difficult for me to commute from St. Mary's. The first internship I did, I believe it was the summer after my sophomore year. It was called the Next Gen Leaders Program, and it actually was majority business majors, which was interesting. I heard about the program through a connection I had she's like a pre-law student, but she was running the program that year. And she was like, "Oh, Jessa, we're working with the healthcare system this year." And I was like, "Okay, well, this sounds interesting." And also chemicals stress me out, so I'm gonna go do this. And it ended up being a really good experience for me. I worked on a team with undergraduate students and a PhD candidate, and her PhD was in social work. And the two undergraduate students that were also on the same team as me were both finance majors. So it was really kind of an odd team of people. And our goal was to make a wellness curriculum that targeted middle school students living in really underserved areas in Hawaii. We have some difficulties with healthcare infrastructure here and some issues with socioeconomic things that can affect the way that certain communities receive health, access health, that kind of stuff. It was the internship that made me realize I was interested in public health. Um, and that interest has carried me ever since, which is really kind of odd that that's how that landed for me. The second internship I did was spring of last year. Um, I'm not somebody who's liked wet labs as much. I find them interesting, but they really, really, really stress me out most of the time. So I tend to lean more towards dry lab stuff. This one was it was mostly remote, and the whole goal of the project was to identify two genes that were of interest for potential hematopoietic stem cell therapies for blood, bone marrow, immune disorders. Um, and we all had individual, it was a group of four, and we each had to identify two genes pretty much all by yourself. They gave you the instructions, and you kind of were chugging along for the 8 weeks, but it was not a lot of guidance, which I think made me really have to work hard to figure out what I was doing. And that was also a really great experience. It showed me that I do tend to like being out in the community more, but I think you have to have those kind of experiences where you're like, oh, maybe not this so much to kind of figure out where you land. So it was good anyway.
Yeah, that's great. And that's one of the things that I like to point out to people. Like these first experiences, like not all of them are perfect, but you got to start somewhere and try some things in order to figure out what's going to work for you. So let's, for those of you who I pre-shared the questions with them, we're going to skip ahead to the benefits part of it. So how do you see this relating to where you want to be? How did it inform where you want to be as you were thinking about your future?
For me, I think it definitely helped me identify a population that I worked with. Since I specifically did parents of children with autism, and now I'm going into marriage and family therapy for my career. This was kind of like a stepping stone towards to see if that's something I really wanted to do. And luckily it was. I enjoyed talking to parents and connecting it with their children and seeing the implications of family as a whole. But if it went the opposite way, where maybe working with people on the spectrum was something that I didn't want to do, I could have learned that from this experience as well. So I think a big benefit was just being able to test and see if this is something that I wanted to do in a population that I wanted to work with.
Should I go next? Okay, so I would say the benefits were again learning certain skill sets that were really valued in my field of interest in biomedical science. Networking was a huge benefit, especially at the end. There was a conference where I got the opportunity to speak at, and I was able to not only network within Sense Research, but meet a few people outside as well. And I would say that it really helped confirm that this is what I can see myself doing in the long run, because not all science is the same. I would say the plant work that I did at St. Mary's is very different from this work I did at Sense Research Foundation, and it helped me kind of find that niche within science that I really could see myself fitting in the long run. I would also say that my research at Sense Research Foundation actually fits very nicely in my project that I'm working on now. And that was something that I was able to really leverage. I was like, I worked with this protein that you're interested in. And because of that really direct connection, they were like, that would be great to have you on our team. And so things like that, sometimes you'll have unexpected connections between previous summer internships and your future careers. And so I would say that that's something that's been really helpful for me. And it taught me a lot of, because a lot of my experiences were very independent, My work right now is also very independent. I have a mentor, but he's very hands off. And so those earlier experiences, again, have helped me kind of realize how to keep a good lab notebook, how to critically think and problem solve when issues arise, so I don't have to fully rely on a mentor. Obviously, he's there when I need, but it's been really helpful to have those skills kind of already built up from the summer internships I had.
I think my answer is going to be very similar. I didn't go into college knowing that I wanted to go to medical school. I was actually in like a lot of denial for the longest time because I was really scared of the process. I'm Pacific Islander and we're really underrepresented in the medical field. And I think that played a big role. So being able to do an internship that gave me a completely different perspective of the same system was really helpful. I got placed at the hospital that I'd volunteered at for a couple years. And it was really different seeing it from the more business side. I think it was also valuable because as a biology student, especially, I don't get to interact with especially business students, liberal arts students so much. Well, liberal arts students I kind of get to see, but only because I'm a music minor. I don't think I get that much connections between my majors and others, unfortunately, because of the classes I take. And that was really interesting because I just haven't had exposure to those things, and I think that informs the decisions I make now. I think it opened my perspective a little bit more, and I also think that being able to get that additional perspective kind of shifted me away from this one rigid template that I thought I needed to be for the longest time. Like for the longest time, I was trying to force myself to do wet lab research because I thought that's what I needed to do, even though I would literally be so stressed out trying to mix my stuff. It just wasn't the right fit for me. So I think being able to get something that was a little bit different than other people and being able to really, really just dive into that was helpful for me in trying to like smooth out my strengths versus what I'm maybe not kind of leaning towards, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's awesome. And right, that's what we're hoping for. You try some things, you try some other things. I just the first research experience I had got me interested in thinking about structure, but it like the exact project wasn't a good fit. And then I started working with DNA and RNA, and I've been doing it for 20 years now. And so you just like once you find something that works, you find ways to build and see how things relate. So let's go back and talk a little bit about applications. How did you hear about all of these different processes? What sorts of things were required for the application? And importantly, when were they due? Because I think students don't always realize that now is the time for thinking about next summer.
I heard about the application from my psychology research methods teacher, Dr. O'Neill. She also did the summer research program, and she kind of told me about it because I was starting to gain an interest in research. And I hadn't done research prior to it, so she felt like this would have been a good start for me. Um, so I think I would say maybe I heard it was coming up around December and then the applications open in Jan. So I kind of jumped on it pretty early. Um, but yeah, I think definitely being aware of it from an early point. I think a lot of students who aren't aware miss out on it because they realize that it's kind of too late because applications are already due. So definitely I would recommend be thinking ahead. And also I would say it doesn't hurt to just apply to it, even if you're applying to multiple. It's better to have your options available and see if it's something you want to do, see if it's a program and a fit for you, rather than miss out on it.
Yeah, and I can speak for St. Mary's that we would always rather have you apply here and somewhere else, and we will be your biggest cheerleaders if you get somewhere else also, right? Like we're never going to be like, oh darn, right? So we definitely encourage that because you put out lots of feelers and see what works out.
Yeah, so I heard about the St. Mary's program, research program, actually before I started St. Mary's, but it was something that I just applied to on a whim during freshman year, because freshmen are not usually like guaranteed a position in their research program. But I thought, I'll try anyways and see what happens. And so it worked out, and it was all just because I thought I'll go for it and see what happens. So even if you're not sure that a program might not accept you, it doesn't hurt to try. And so my other two internships, Sandia National Library Laboratories and Sense Research Foundation, I found through a lot of Google searches. I was looking for, again, biomedical science programs, 10-week internships, and also looking for paid internships because that's always also a bonus. And there's a lot of websites out there that actually list, I was specifically looking in California, and you can find like state by state, here are all the different kind of summer research programs that you can apply to. Most universities, like for example UCSF, UC Berkeley also have summer research programs, not only for their students, but for students across the country who can apply. But then also the more independent research institutions or private institutions or government institutions like Sandia National Laboratories or Sense Research Foundation also have some. Um, all my applications were about the same. They all required like a few questions about your interest in research, kind of why this program. They're all basically like mini personal statements. And I have to say that going through that process every year looking for summer research programs has really helped me when I'm now applying to grad school because they're very similar in terms of what you have to put in there. And I think that practice is, even if you, again, like you're not sure you're going to get into programs, just that process of applying is also very beneficial. And I would say summer research program at St. Mary's had one of my latest deadlines. I think all the other ones are due in late December or like first or second week of January. So I would start looking during like the fall semester, and then write most of my application during Thanksgiving and the winter break, and then submit like end of December, early January during Jan term.
Almost all of my applications every year have been due in January, which is really tight for a lot of people. I had one due in April, like one time, but for the most part, they're due in, I think the deadline I just hit was January 10th. I think the advice I would give is aim for 5 days before the deadline to be done, because then at least if you're not done by that day, you still have 5 days to recover. I just submitted applications for this year, and I was doing it at the same time as taking a Jan term class and studying to take the MCAT, and it was not great. It was very not awesome, and I don't think I would have finished it had I not started like a month ago. Um, the other thing that I would say is for the programs that I've applied to, since they're not so much wet lab, I almost never get asked whether I can do PCR or whether I can do a blot and be able to know what it's doing. They usually ask me about like my purpose and stuff. Um, More recently, I've started applying to programs that specifically serve URM students, which means that you're underrepresented in the medical field. And that encompasses a wide variety of communities. And I thought that that was better for me because of my identity, I haven't had as many opportunities as other students in a lot of different ways. I've had more in some ways, but less in others. And I value the mentorship that a program that specifically focuses on URM students can offer me. And also because it's interesting to me, those things. The other thing I would say is use the Career Center because I don't know how to write a CV. I never learned how to do it in class. And I got so much help from the Career Center over the last 3 years applying. And I really don't think I would have gotten it otherwise. So, and then the last thing I would say is don't be afraid of failure. My internship that I had in the spring last year, that was the fourth time I applied to it. And I finally got it on the fourth try. So you never want to be like, oh, I failed the first time. I'm never going to do it again because I'm so embarrassed. If they keep seeing your name roll over in the applications, they might remember you. And if they don't remember you, then maybe that's good too, because they won't remember any weird things on your application from last time. So even if you don't get accepted the first time, apply the second time, maybe even apply the third time and like overdo it a little bit. Because maybe you'll get it on third or fourth try like I did.
That's great. And we are going to do a second workshop next week that's all about the application process. But I do want to point out that most places are going to ask for recommendations. And because of that tight timeline, that can be really hard if you're like, oh crap, I have an application due in a week. There's no way to get the letter that fast. So if you already have the letter written, it doesn't take faculty that long to like swap out the name. Right. So like the name of the institution, not the name of the student. That would be weird. And so, it's a lot easier if you've started early and they've got the letter written. And then as Amaya knows, you just have to keep reminding your faculty because we have the best of intentions, but we need that, like it's due in a week. It's due in 3 days. No, it's really due today. And there was one that I thought I was on top of, and then it was due at, 11 instead of midnight, and she's texting me, right? So, you just don't be embarrassed to remind your faculty. We do want to help you. And so Amaya has been able to join us. So if you want to share just a little bit about your internships, and in particular, we've been talking about how do you find these internships that are off campus, and in your case, near where you were living.
Okay, yeah, hi. Sorry, I'm a little bit late. I had it as 6:30, not 6, but I'm glad my calendar reminded me. Yeah, I found my internships. So I've actually only ever gotten accepted to one, and that was like really nice because then I did that one last summer, but I also applied my sophomore year. Yeah, in terms of finding things where you're living, there's like some really great like REU websites. I don't know if someone's already mentioned that, but yeah, those are fantastic for finding like different opportunities at different universities, like close to where your home is or where you go to school. And yeah. And then I just looked like, so I lived in Seattle and then I looked around there and applied to a bunch there and I didn't get into any of them and that was okay. And so I applied again the next summer to internships that were like near where I was living then. And then I was lucky enough to get into one. Yeah, I would say like I look for, at least for mine, like I looked for universities near where I was living because those always have great summer internships and like good funding too for students. And then either like I don't know, like biomedical companies or like biotech companies also have really great internships. And then, like Jessa already mentioned, the Career Center is great for looking for internships. So that's something I'd recommend. Yeah, I don't know if I have any other advice that is different from what everyone else already said, but yeah.
Thank you. So let's maybe one more round of anything else you want to share, and in particular, things you wish you knew going into the process that would have better prepared you either for getting internships or sort of taking advantage of what the opportunities during the internship.
I think one additional thing for me would be like the relationships that came from afterwards. I think that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense, but the two professors that did summer research for the psychology department, they both have written my letters of rec for grad school that I'm applying to right now. I got into both of their research teams for this past fall and spring semester. So just being able to know that like your internships aren't always just within the 10 weeks. These are relationships that you can form and like keep going afterwards too. Another thing I think that we might have not mentioned yet is conferences. I know for the summer research program, almost all of us, if we're not presenting at St. Mary's in the mini conferences we've had here or the student one in the spring, many of us are taking them elsewhere. I'm going to Stanford next month from an Bay Area Autism Conference with doctors and other researchers from around California. So just being able to like find these opportunities to present your research and take it further. And just remembering that like these internships and relationships aren't just in the period that you're doing your project in.
Things that I wish, I guess, known going into the process would be to like take advantage as much as you can of the internship. That includes asking as many questions as you can. I think a lot of times it's very intimidating walking into an internship because it's a new environment, you don't fully know what to expect, and sometimes that can make you nervous to ask questions. But all of your mentors are there to help you in any way they can. So I started asking my mentors kind of what their career trajectories are like so that they could so I could learn from kind of how they approached, their careers, and that really helped inform mine as well. Um, I would also say try to understand, like, if this goes especially for biomedical science research, is you have to try to know as much as you can about your project and ask as many questions as you can. And the reason for that is for interviews. Once you start, applying to other internships or jobs after graduation, one thing I noticed, one particular interview I had um, for after I graduated was very in-depth questions about my research. And so it's really important to like really know your research front and back so that you're able to be on top of those questions. And I think, having in the back of your head while you're going through the internship, like I need to know my research really well, is also really beneficial just in the long run as well. But just like enjoy it as well. I think those questions come with natural curiosity about what you're doing. So like if you're enjoying what you're doing, you kind of have it in the back of your mind as well. So not to like be intimidated by your research experience.
I think my last thing would be to own your identity and really push deep to find what you like. I think what went different for me after I started doing that was I for people who know me, they know that I'm really, really, really involved on campus. I just like to have a lot of things to do. And I think it was those experiences that allowed me to really speak to who I am on an application. Because when you're trying to stand out in a giant pool of applicants, you really have to know who you are. What's been different for me lately is having done that internship in public health, that informed the 2 contracts that I've done in the last 2 years. And now I can say, oh, yes, I actually do have extra experience, even though I don't work in a lab. I did 2 like literature review community projects. And even though that's not really maybe what other people's projects look like during the year, that's what I really love. So I don't think I could convince somebody that I love to titrate things day in, day out, every day, every second of the day. I think about titrating things. I just couldn't do it because it's not what I'm really passionate about. But I could convince somebody that I'm really passionate about public health and health disparities. And that's been informed by not only the project that I did a couple years ago, but the projects that I've done since. So once you find your interest, really just try super hard to find stuff that lets you explore that. I got so many no's from professors when I started trying to do my contracts, like literally so many. Don't take it personally. They might just be too busy to help you that semester. And that's okay. Don't give up after the first no, because I've had probably twice the number of no's or maybe 3 times the number of no's than yeses. Eventually somebody will say yes. It might not look like what you originally thought it was going to look like, but it'll be good.
I feel like I have 2 last things. Kind of the first one, I think Jess already mentioned this, but yeah, like your applications for most of your summer internships will look really similar in terms of your personal statement. So don't be afraid to apply to a lot of places. Like kind of like all of us have already said, like you'll more than likely get rejected from more than you get accepted into, and that's just normal and that's fine. So the more you apply to, great. If you have time to do it, I think that's like a beneficial thing just for your career, your job, your graduate school, if you go on further study. It's just a good like life skill to have to be able to write about your research or your interests. And then also I would say, which is like as interns, people are really excited to have you there. Like that's not something I realized before, but like to have like a young, fresh, curious person, like who's in your lab or in your space, is exciting. Like these people most of the time work with the same thing every day and have worked with that for years. So like ask questions, be curious, because that's actually like exciting for them. It's not annoying or hard. So yeah, that would be my other little thing of advice.
Awesome. Well, I so appreciate you all making time to be here with us. Anything else y'all have thought of? And then I'm going to invite Maria up here also to just talk a little bit more about the finding of internships. But any questions for each other? For Lauren, any questions for our panelists? Okay. Oh, yeah.
I actually, sorry, yes, I have a question. Sorry, I can turn my camera on if it works. Perfect. So a lot of I remember a professor talking about like a lot of internships require like experience, whether it's like in a research setting or like in a lab. How has that, or have you guys seen that happen a lot? And how has that impacted like the opportunities you guys have gotten to be a part of internships and research?
That's a really good question. I know for the summer research program, I didn't have prior research experience at all, other than a basic psychology research course I was in. And I think just in your application, being able to demonstrate that you're passionate about it and this is something that you want to do and you want to learn how to do it and how to do it well really makes you stand out. Because everyone needs that first internship. Like you have to get your experience somewhere for the first time. And even though they're probably like big teams and labs might say no when you don't have the experience, I know there are a lot of places that are willing to take people who don't have that research experience yet. So I would speak highly about the summer research program based on that from my own experience.
I would also speak highly to this St. Mary's Summer Research Program. I, again, had no prior experience, and I really feel like it was that internship that gave me kind of the application to apply to other programs that did prefer that their students had more research. But I will say that I think majority of the programs I applied to in sophomore and junior year always had like a little snippet saying that your previous research experience is not required, while it is preferred. And again, I think like Ryan said, that if you can emphasize your passion for this subject, that's really what they're looking for, especially since they know that you're an undergraduate, you're just starting out. These programs are meant to help build you up. And I think another thing that might be helpful in your application is, even if you don't have formal research experience, I think talking about experiences in classrooms, like if you got to do a research project, even if it was part of the syllabus, those are some things that you can talk about too, and talk about like what lab work in a classroom setting. It still, counts. You have a little bit of experience there, and most colleges and most private universities that are specifically like the undergraduate training programs are looking for that.
Okay. Other questions? And Lauren, I know, for example, you're taking a Jan term that has an ongoing research project, right? So you could absolutely talk about that. What they're looking for is less about like all of the tiny little details and more of the how do you think about science? How do you understand like what was our question and like how does this all fit together? All of that sort of thing. Other questions? Okay, well, thank you again to our panelists, and check your emails later today. You look for a Starbucks card. Check your spam if you don't see it. And I super appreciate you, everyone who called in from all over the world, and Rianne for being here with us. So thank you. And Lauren, if you want to stay on and I'll keep recording, we're going to just have Dr. Lee from the Summer Research Program and Maria from the Career Center come up and join me, and just talk a little bit more about like how do we find these, how do the application processes work.
I can sit next to you.
You want to sit next to me?
Hi, everyone. So I'm Dr. Lee. I'm currently the director of the Summer Research Program here at St. Mary's. And I had put together some notes in terms of what I wanted to make sure definitely comes up. But our panelists were all absolutely amazing, and essentially everything came up naturally. So this is going to be part me just reiterating, I think, some repetition is a form of emphasis of just things that I think have been important for me and for past students that have gone through the physics and astronomy program, as well as give you maybe a little bit more information about the summer research program, since that has also come up a couple times. So I'll start with SRP. So the idea again with SRP is that it is a research experience that occurs here on campus. You apply in essentially now. So I think for this year's cycle, the application will become available next week. And then you'll have about a month before it is due. So it'll be due sometime mid-February or so. That application will consist of a couple essays, kind of, 2-paragraph essays, as the panelists have talked about, kind of asking you to talk about kind of what do you think about science, why you invested and interested in these things. We do not assume any prior research experience. We actually, I think, maybe even lean a little bit towards favoring those who do not have any prior research experience. And then you apply to work with a faculty member here on campus. And I'll reiterate, I think what makes St. Mary's and particularly the summer research program so special, not just because I'm the director, but in that yes, and we'll talk about kind of how you find these experiences, throughout the nation and how you can apply nationally to all these other programs. But those programs then, by being national programs, means you're going up against a nation of STEM majors, where the fact that we have this at St. Mary's, for a school of this size, the fact that we can offer a summer research experience like the big, R1 institutions can, I think is fairly unique. And I think makes it much less competitive for you in terms of getting in. So you get that same great experience and then also don't have to worry too much about, that you are 1 out of 1,000, that's applying. So again, that takes place over the summer, and for the dates this year, right, it's going to be that it would start May 28th and goes to August 6th. So that part of the 10-week program over the summer, you are given on-campus housing. This is considered a job. So we ask that you treat it as a job, that you aren't taking classes, you aren't taking week-long vacations, during this time. So think of it like a job. And I think the panelists would say the same for all their internships, right? They're not going to be very happy if you just disappeared for 3 weeks. Since it is a job, you also get paid. I don't know if some of the internships we've heard about, some may have been paid, some are unpaid. Internships vary. For the summer research program at St. Mary's, it is a paid position as well. And as I think Rian had mentioned, there then are some fall activities that also occur after that 10-week program in the summer. There is a public talk that you give. We call it the lightning talk, where you have to give a 3-minute version of what you did all summer. Which is a challenge. And then we have a kind of mini conference where you also put together a conference poster. And as some have mentioned, many then take that poster to actual conferences off campus. But we also have one on campus that is also paired with a little mini competition where we have some judges that will kind of, assess kind of your public talk and your interaction in your posters. And there's a little bit of a monetary prize and a nice little garnish on your CV, for that as well. So in terms of the summer research program, before I kind of reiterate my other points, as Dr. Roof said, we are going to have an application workshop next week. This is a workshop that's going to be open to anyone who's interested in summer programs, but we're going to use the summer research program application as a template and example, because as the panelists have talked about, the questions that are asked really are more or less the same questions. So we'll talk about kind of strategies and how to think about these questions, because it's about specifics. One of the panelists talked about, just like if I can talk about how passionate I am about, public health versus being able to give, 20,000 examples of them titrating and stuff. I don't even know what that means. So I would really, encourage you to come to that next week if you can attend. It's, I think, going to be here in the STEM Center as well. And I'll be sending some reminder emails, probably either late this week or early next week regarding that. And yeah, the other thing that I was going to say about looking for internships, and again, most of this has come up, in terms of looking for and finding things. I know that, Google is your friend. Just relevant searches, location plus internship plus the field that you're in. It could be a great place to start, just kind of trying to look around. And those things and things to consider, when you're trying to look for internships, right? You can start kind of very broadly, and then you could try to get more specific. Like, for example, if you're going to be local in the area, you could do San Francisco internships, biological sciences or something like that. That kind of hones in a little bit on where you plan to be, or something to consider is where you might like to end up. If you want to ultimately be in the St. Louis, metropolitan area, right? Maybe finding internships, in that area would be a great way to kind of get your foot in the door in terms of potential job opportunities that could happen after graduation. Because some of these internships could potentially turn into actual jobs, once you're done with school. Someone did bring this up in terms of that's very often there are internships and research programs that may target specific communities. So do not hesitate to look for those as well, right? like women in science, LGBTQI+, people of color. There are many internships and REU experiences, research experiences out there that want to bring in underrepresented voices. So don't hesitate to look for that. LinkedIn actually hasn't come up at point. In terms of, admittedly, LinkedIn, well, no, this is going to show my age. I guess LinkedIn, wasn't really a strategy that I used that much when I was an undergrad, but it seems to become more and more of an effective tool. Where recommendations we've given in physics is, look to see, like, in your LinkedIn network, look and see where they might have done internships, by looking through their profile, and that might give you some ideas of where you might possibly want to look. Also, something that we've said is if you are really invested in working in X or working at X, then try to find employees or people that have worked at that place on LinkedIn, and then see where they might have done internships before getting that job. Because then that can give you some ideas of where you might want to look, and then that's going to be a step in the right direction for sure. Let's see, what else do I have here? Internships and research experiences, I think, are just kind of two examples. There's also like leadership and mentorship programs, that are possible as well. So, these are just words I'm going to throw out there, right? That might be in one of your various Google searches, where I know like those sorts of programs can be like essentially maybe less like you're in a lab, 40 hours a week, but it might be a little bit more structured, kind of like how the summer research experience is, how Rianne was talking about how we have these I call them Wednesday professional development meetings, right? That's not just that you're working with a faculty member, but you have these weekly meetings where we do science communication, how to make a poster, all these things that, develop you at the professional development level. Career services, we're going to hear about that, in a minute. And then there's also industry-specific platforms. Like when I was just Googling, while I was waiting for my turn, just things like, and you don't necessarily even need that many specifics. Like if you want to go into science, right, then thinking about kind of what are the big science places, in the area. So for example, like Cal Academy of Science. I might not have thought, right off the top of my head that, oh yeah, it makes sense that they would probably have lots of internships available to science majors. But those sorts of places, especially if you have a more of a niche major, like to use that example, like if you want to go into like museum curation, where like big universities are probably not going to have that necessarily, then thinking about these other places like Cal Academy of Science or NASA, for example, I know has a lot of national internship programs, and government labs, Livermore, to use a local example, might also have these sorts of things.
Yeah, we've had alums who've done internships at the Oakland Zoo, right? And so whatever you want to do, there's probably internships out there.
And then the last two things, I'll say, well, three things. I admittedly am not super familiar with this website, but I know some students have said that pathways-to-science.org is one particular website that has, I guess it's like a searchable database, of things that you can do to find various options. I'm so glad this next point came up. Failure does happen, and it will likely happen more often than the successes with these sorts of things. Especially when you're up against large national competitive pools. So, and what the panelists said is absolutely correct. Do not take it personally. If you get rejected. I think when I was applying to the National Science Foundation for this was for a fellowship, but similar sorts of thing. Like I got every possible response from them. Like first year I applied, I think they just said LOL. Second year I got an honorable mention, and third year I finally got it. And all you need is that you finally got it, right? So yeah, and I know we've had in physics, some students can start to get really demoralized. It's like, well, I applied to 5 of them this year. They all said no. In that case, like, again, don't take it super personally because these are competitive programs, but also utilize your resources and use that as an opportunity to see like, okay, there's something about my application that's not making me jump to the top. And it's not a shortcoming. It's not because you're just not capable or good enough. It's that maybe it's something like, oh yeah, like I just keep using the word titration, but I'm not actually saying anything specific, in that case. In that case, then, yeah, having peers or colleagues or the Career Center, right, that can give feedback on applications, faculty, we can give feedback, as long as you give us more than 5 days, to do that, we're more than happy, and in my role as the summer research program director, even for the summer research application, I'm more than happy to give feedback on stuff that you write. So again, like failure does happen. I think we can all attest to, lots of rejections, which just, if you just view it from the framing of this is an opportunity for me to, what can I gain from this, right? Yeah, I didn't get this internship, but what can I gain from this? Then you might be able to think about like, okay, well, what I try differently, or, how could I try to position myself better next year?
Or are there some lab experiences I can get in the coming year? Is there some independent study I can do, right? Little things you can do to start to gain experience.
Yeah. And that actually is a perfect transition to my last point, in that it can really seem, I know I've definitely felt this, where sometimes it can really feel like in order to get these fancy internships, I need to have had a fancy internship, or in order to have get this fellowship, it seems like all the people getting these fellowships got other fellowships in the past. So it's some sort of chicken and egg thing going on, Mobius or Boros thing going on of you need something in order to get something. I mean, and I think, well, I'll just speculate. I think it feels and seems like that. I think probably because the people who got those previous ones have figured out kind of, just like how to craft the application, or, they had mentorships or peer review that helped them kind of get their applications to the level where they were sticking out and jumping up to the top. That doesn't mean that if you don't have that right now, that you'll never get there. So in that regard, like, don't view it as in like, well, these people are getting it, so they're going to get everything and I'm not. It really is that you just, you will have to try multiple times in order, if you ask these people that are getting all the fellowships, I bet they can talk about, 10 times as many rejections as they got for those, before they got to that point. So yeah, I think I would end there, which again, seems like I'm mostly just repeating stuff that the panel said, which is great. I'm glad this all came up naturally.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, Maria, could you tell us a little bit about the services y'all offer in the Career Center? What you recommend people have before they come see you, what you'll help them develop?
So hi, Lauren. I'm Maria. I'm one of the career counselors in the Career Center. I work specifically with science majors. So what's your major, Lauren?
I'm kind of between biology or chemistry right now, so
Okay.
I'm a science major.
And then what year are you?
I'm a first year.
Okay, well, welcome. And how's your Jan term and all that good stuff?
It's good. I'm in a science Gen term. I was with Dr. Roof last week, and so we're doing a lot of cool stuff. I'm getting to explore lots of different branches of science, which I'm really enjoying, and it's very enriching, I would say.
Yes. So that's definitely what the Career Center can help supplement, is that exploration. I come from a, just like your professors here, very strengths-based. So what can you bring versus what do you not have? And so we sit together and we explore. I don't have answers. I don't give you answers. I don't tell you this is what you should do. This is what you, because that's not my role. It's really you and whatever you want to explore. And then when Dr. Lee was talking about like LinkedIn and Google, So I am also the how-to. So if you don't have a LinkedIn, then you and I can sit together and we can actually craft a LinkedIn. And then also if you don't know how to reach out or network, that's where we come in also to show what does that look like, because saying it is very different from actually putting yourself in front of someone and introducing yourself. Like, what do you say when it's silence? You know, how do you end a conversation? So we do a lot of professional development in that way. And then also I can help with, you know, when you do apply to an internship, it's the application process. So I've worked with Rianne, I've worked with Jessa, I've worked with, is it Sahiba? Sahiba. I've worked with them on all of their applications for their, I don't know what internship, but personal statements. Personal statements are probably, I think, one of the most difficult things to do because it's usually one page and it's a one-dimensional piece of paper and you're multi-dimensional. So how do you put all of that on paper? And how do you stand out? Yeah. And it's awkward. You're putting yourself to be judged by someone to read about you. You know, but you know, we take, you know, all of your identities, all of your experiences, whether it's related to bio or chemistry or not. Leadership roles are definitely important. So that's the tangible things that I can help with and support. It definitely is, it's a numbers game as well as early application. I would go, I'll tell Jessa this, but I wouldn't apply 5 days before. I would apply earlier than that because some positions will read as, you know, what is it, like a rolling basis, yeah, versus like waiting until the deadline and then reading it. So that's also the other part. So those like ins and outs is what I can sit down with you about. The other part is we're in Ferragero Hall, second floor. We are open also during Jan term. Drop-ins, walk-ins are welcome, as well as appointments, Monday through Friday. My appointments start at 10, they end at 5. And then if you want to do some research on your own, Google search is good for internships. If you even look up REU, that's also good. Handshake is a good one. I don't think you're on my email list because first years don't declare a major yet, but I'll also, I send weekly internships that are available for science majors. Some of them are science-y and some of them are not, but they have there's a lot of opportunities to show like transferable skills, like leadership and, how, you know, being a writer or teaching. There's a lot of teaching in STEM. What else do we offer? Career fairs. Please attend all of the events that have to do with career fairs and networking, because you just never know who knows who. SMC has such a large alumni network that it's so important to get yourself out there and to practice. Practice your elevator pitch, practice active listening skills, practice how to like hold a cup while you're having food and talking to a stranger. Like those are skills that are difficult, you know, to do. And messy, I think.
And you gave an excellent, you know, activity
with Philip.
SRP. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Philip is better than that than I am. So I know I'm in the role of career counseling, but networking scares me. I don't like talking to people I don't know. I don't like large groups of people. I like very small, like this is a good setting for me. But there are some people that are just very naturally good at schmoozing and being charismatic. So we also teach, you know, how to elevate that skill or how to show you how to do it for the first time. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't have notes like Dr. Lee did. I just, but you have any questions, Lauren?
I don't think so, not right now. But everything that everyone said was very helpful. So thank you.
Of course. And also the other thing is you don't need to bring anything to the Career Center. You just bring yourself. If you don't have a resume, that's totally fine. If you just want to talk, that's fine.
I have a question. You said that I guess STEM majors are kind of part of your kind of email list, yes. And then that's automatically.
Yeah, that's like I have to individually.
Okay. So then my question was going to be like, you know, for someone who's listening to this later on,
yeah.
right, and are just like, oh, some of that stuff seems interesting.
Yeah.
What should they reach out to you specifically?
Yeah, you can reach out to me. Also, you can find me on Handshake. And Handshake is an app. I was gonna say icon, but I don't think students use that these days is very old school, but the app on your dashboard and it says handshake. And so you click on that and that's how you find jobs off campus, on campus, and how you make an appointment with the Career Center.
That's a good point. And thinking about summer jobs and activities. We had a physics professor last summer who was not part of the summer research program, but she ended up having an activity that she wanted to have a student, work on her with. And so she posted it on Handshake. So
yes.
So yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, and we help with the posting as well as of getting it out there. And let us look, for the postings because you don't have time to look through thousands. So that's why we try to do we try to send these out, as much as possible and CC, other staff members who have access to, students so they can send it to you. And also come to all of our events, come to all the career events. Because it really is like you just never know who knows who. And that's also part of finding internships or mentorship opportunities.
Yeah, and I think companies are getting better about actually using the official application process because that actually leads to a lot of bias when people just hire people that they know.
Yes.
It used to be much more like that. And I hope that some of the I'm just gonna call somebody and get you hopefully some of that is
oh my gosh,
improving. But it doesn't hurt to know people, right?
At least for tips and advice. No, it's absolutely true. I mean, networking is definitely does bring up a lot of equity issues as well, and then also kind of like what Jessa was leaning what she mentioned in her was that she's had some opportunities but not others, and that could be because of an identity that she holds, and so it's very true. So it's utilizing what you have, but also finding that there are ways to get what you need through here.
Well, I super appreciate you hanging with us because otherwise we would have been talking to a blank space as we made this recording. And so you have earned my undying gratitude anytime you need someone to look at a personal statement.
That's
win-win. And yeah, let us know if you have any other questions now or in the future. Definitely happy to answer any.
Yeah, it's great that you're thinking. So
as a first year.
Yeah, as a first year. And for people watching later on, if you're a senior and now it's just expletives coming out of your mouth, that's okay too.
It's okay.
It
happens.
There's still the fact that you're thinking about this at all, is a step in the right direction.
Hey, thank you guys so much.
Yep. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, you too.